We are in a very interesting time in history with this COVID virus, this COVID-19. Donald Trump was president 2020, January, when he was hiding the fact that there was a COVID virus, a coronavirus, which they named COVID-19. That was causing a lot of illness and death in certain parts of the world. In China and Italy, it was around late January 2020 when it was finally revealed that yes, there was this pandemic around the world. This coronavirus was causing illness and many people were dying. So we were all urged to eventually get a vaccine, which was available very quickly. And we were told that this is the thing that will save our lives. They were giving us some preventive measures, but they were rolling them out very slowly and inefficiently. And we were told that really what we needed was the vaccine. This was a messenger RNA vaccine. This was an RNA virus. And the vaccine is going to insert something into your RNA, and that will help you produce an immune reaction that will save your life from this pandemic. So some people bought into it immediately because there was a huge fear factor. They were showing over and over reports of deaths and how many people are dying and you're going to be next and all of this stuff. And everybody has it. Every day on the news we hear of more and more people who have this virus who don't seem to be dying, but they do have the virus, and so they need this vaccine. Then we're told there is a change in the virus, and we need to have the same vaccine repeated, and then we're told we need a third booster shot of the same vaccine, and on, and it really became quite confusing. I was confused about this repeated need for the same vaccine over and over. So I began to think, what in the world is going on? And what I'm going to say are my feelings and thoughts on the COVID pandemic. And I'm going to start off with another story, which is about corn. Ever since, well, almost forever, but I'd say back in the 70s and so forth, scientists have been wanting to know what is the genetic makeup of corn, because they found that they could patent corn if they had the genetic makeup and they were able to do something patentable. So you can't take regular corn from the field and patent it because you haven't done anything to it. It hasn't been altered in any way to make it special so that you can reproduce it, and you have the secret way of doing that. So companies like Monsanto and others went out and for many decades were testing corn, and they were adding various things to corn. They were saying it's because it makes corn stronger, you need fewer pesticides to grow it, it's healthier, it looks better, still very nutritious. And so they were able to insert certain things, fish and so forth, into the corn genetics, and then they patented all of this stuff. So now they had corn that was patentable. Well, they didn't have a lot of buy-in for this because they were charging a lot of money for this corn, and this corn could not be grown every year. If you had the seed for the corn, you had to buy new seed every year from Monsanto because that was part of their sales. You couldn't do it over and over, and they would go out and they would check the fields of farmers who were growing corn, and they would see what kind of corn they're growing. And if they were growing corn from seed from the previous year, well, then that corn could be taken down because that was illegal corn. They weren't supposed to grow that. And then they would make the farmers buy new seed, which was very expensive. And this was devastating, and impossible for small corn farmers, some of whom fed their families on a lot of corn and other things that they grew, and they couldn't afford this very expensive seed every year. What they used to do is grow corn, dry out the kernels from the old corn, and plant that, and so they could always have a continuing supply of corn. But with this patented corn that they had come out with, you couldn't do that, because if you dried out the seeds and then tried to replant it, when the checkers came out to the cornfields of anybody that was growing corn and picked up some seeds and took it to the lab, if they found out that that corn was from the old supply of corn, then they would come in and take down all of the farmer's corn, and he wouldn't have any corn. So they invaded the food industry with a lot of things. Corn was the biggest and probably is one of the most adulterated things. And corn is in everything. Corn chips, corn cereals, corn, all kinds of things. So they had a huge market, and they were able to have their patent affect everything that's being made from corn around the world. This isn't just in the United States. This is around the world. So it's easy to understand why people such as Bill Gates are buying up all of the farm fields in the United States, because now they have the ability to have a patent on food by adulterating it and also beating out the competition to grow unadulterated food. So more and more of our food is adulterated, changed by a company, so that it's not the natural product that we used to get in the 1950s, but this is something new. It has something done to the DNA that made the food itself patentable and now a profit source for these companies. The other thing that the corn used to do is that it had ways of killing natural corn that was grown around it, and one of the things they used, as we all know from Monsanto, was Roundup. Roundup was able to kill anything green, and that would spread. So you would put it on one thing and it would spread to other things. And so people found that if you were a corn farmer on lot A, if the person on lot B was growing corn and he was using Roundup and had these other chemically changed corn and seeds growing on his lot, his stuff would fly over to lot A and would kill or mutate his corn. So now he has mutated corn, which does not look good and is not going to be sold in the supermarkets. Now that's just a surface description of what has been happening to food. And I just used the example of corn. And Monsanto, we know with Roundup, has also had some very big lawsuits because that stuff not only affects food, but it also affects the people who apply the Roundup. And many people have died by becoming dependent on using Roundup to kill weeds and so forth in their business. And Monsanto had a big lawsuit, and I believe they moved out of the United States. They're in some country like Norway or whatever. And they were sold, I believe, to the Bayer company. Now that I'm not sure, I haven't checked those facts, but I will double check those facts in a future podcast. So why is that connected to what's going on now? When you do these kinds of genetic changes, a lot of people have to come into the fold. A lot of people, Monsanto just can't come out and say, I'm going to do this and that and the other. They need the protection of the government in order to capture these farmers, to make them change their seeds, to make them comply with the wishes of the company. And of course they're paid off, so they pay off people who are supposed to protect the food and people in the Food and Drug Administration, presumably, and everybody, your senators, your congressmen, all kinds of people, they pay them off so that everybody complies because they want the money, and it ends up that private companies, which don't have the goal of helping the American people, or any people, they just want the money, they end up the winners, because now they have something that's patented, and you can't even find a non-adulterated corn seed around. And eventually, over generations in the future, if there are some, they're going to be unknown. And even if you find them and you try to grow them, they're going to be attacked by the adulterated corn and the pesticide products that are out there, so that they won't grow nice, beautiful corn, as you saw back in the 1940s. So we have this virus, this coronavirus, that has caused many types of respiratory infections and so forth in the past, including the flu, SARS, MERS, and so forth. And now we have coronavirus, COVID-19, which is now deadly, according to reports, and we hear about all these bodies being piled up in cities like New York and so forth, where they're coming in so fast they can't even bury them. They're being put in trucks, and people are dying without seeing their families, and families are just shocked by all what's happening. So how does this affect us today? I'm going to do that in another podcast.